The former general of the Bosnian Serb army Ratko Mladic will learn his fate on Wednesday as a UN court hands down a landmark verdict at his war crimes trial more than 20 years since the 19,921,995 Balkan Wars. Mladic, a ruthless commander of Bosnian Serb troops known as Butcher of Bosnia, is charged with 11 war crimes. Here we look at the history of the Balkans conflict and some of the key players, including Mladic. Use the menu at the top to navigate to the different sections. What happened in the Balkans conflict? Image under fire in Sarajevo in 1992. At the end of the Second World War, the communist Yugoslavia was made up of 6 republics: Bosnia, Slovenia, Croatia, Montenegro, Serbia and Macedonia. Tensions rose after the death in 1980 of communist leader Tito. By the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of communism, ethnic tensions ran high. After an election which saw mostly nationalist parties win, Slovenia and Croatia started advocating decentralization, declaring their own independence in June 1991. In 1992, Bosnia's Muslims and Croats vote for independence in referendum boycotted by Serbs. War erupts in Bosnia. Image: a young girl cries in the cemetery in Sarajevo, August 1994. In April 1992, after the vote, war broke out between two sides, the Muslims and Croats against the Bosnian Serbs. Bosnia won international recognition the day after the war started. Led by Radovan Karadzic, the Serbs occupied 70% of the country, killing and persecuting Muslims and Croats to carve out a Serb republic. The Muslims and the Croats soon split, with the Croats turning against the Muslims. Bosnian Serb troops launched a siege on the capital of Sarajevo, which lasted 44 months. The city's residents, numbering 350,000, couldn't get basic supplies and at least 10,000 were killed by snipers and shelling. Image: the siege of Sarajevo lasted more than 3 years. By May, Bosnian Serbs controlled 2/3 of the country. Later that year, the first images of the camps that prisoners were held in started to emerge, and the rest of the world became aware of the Bosnian campaign of ethnic cleansing. An estimated 20,000 women, mostly Muslims, were raped. In November 1993, the Mostar Bridge collapsed under Croatian shells. It had stood since the 16th century, a stone bridge that was one of the region's greatest architectural treasures. The loss of the bridge meant the loss of heritage for the Bosnians, as well as a practical difficulty in accessing clean water in other parts of the region. The Srebrenica massacre in July 1995. Bosnian Serb forces, under the command of Mladic, took over Srebrenica, an unprotected safe area. Up to 8,000 Muslim men and boys were massacred. Image: Muslim refugees make their way out of Srebrenica. The enclave was attacked by Mladic's forces as well as the Scorpions, a Serbian paramilitary unit. The UN Protection Forces was not able to prevent the town's capture. The bosses were dumped in unmarked, mass graves. The massacre of Srebrenica, described by 2 courts as genocide, was the worst mass killing in Europe since the end of the Second World War. Mladic and Karadzic were indicted by the UN War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague for genocide. Airstrikes and peace deal. Image: Bill Clinton at the signing of the Dayton Peace Accord in Paris in August 1995, the Sarajevo market was bombed, killing 41 people and leading NATO to begin airstrikes on Bosnian Serb positions. A U.S.-brokered peace deal in Dayton, Ohio, was agreed between the leaders of Bosnia, Serbia and Croatia in November and signed in Paris. In December, a NATO peacekeeping force was deployed in Bosnia, which had been split into a Muslim Croat Federation and the Republika Srpska. The 3-year-long war claimed 100,000 lives and left 2.2 million people homeless. More than 2 decades later, the remains of thousands of victims are still awaiting formal identification. What is the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia? Image: wanted Slobodan Milosevic, Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic. U.S. Ambassador David Sheff appointing, set up in 1993 and based in The Hague. The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia is a court within the United Nations, dealing specifically with the war crimes of the Balkans conflict. The court marked the biggest leap in the field of international criminal law since the Allies tried the Nazis in Nuremberg. Its decisions have set precedents in war crime ruling, including the idea that Nunes' position can protect them from prosecution. The tribunal says it shows communities cannot be held collectively responsible. So far, more than 160 people, including heads of state, prime ministers, army chiefs of staff, interior ministers and many other high and mid-level political, military and police leaders from various parties have been charged by the court. Who is Ratko Mladic? Image Ratko Mladic has said, "I defended my country," known as the Butcher of Bosnia. Mladic was a general of the Bosnian Serb forces, and is charged with 11 counts of genocide and war crimes. Mladic is described as a central figure in the 1995 massacre of thousands of Muslims in Srebrenica, which had been marked as safe by the UN. Prosecutors say he is a main figure of the ruthless campaign of ethnic cleansing. They say he orchestrated the 44-month-long campaign of sniping and shelling in Sarajevo. He is also accused of taking 200 UN peacekeepers hostage, and of ordering troops to drive out Croats, Muslims and non-Serbians in the towns. Indicted by the UN war crimes in 1995, Mladic went into hiding and was captured in 2011 after 16 years on the run. He has remained defiant during his trial, pleading not guilty. He told a pre-trial hearing he was sorry for the innocents killed on all sides. "I defended my country and my people," he has said. Although once feared, the 74-year-old is now spending his days in a small UN cell, where he can only walk his corridor in daylight hours. He has had 3 strokes in the last few years, which have left him with partial paralysis on the right side of his body. Mladic has said not to talk about the trial often, and his lawyers have expressed doubt that he has understanding of what is going on. They have called for his acquittal, while prosecutors demand a life sentence. What happened to Radovan Karadzic? Image Radovan Karadzic spent years in hiding. Radovan Karadzic was forced to quit as leader in 1996, and went into hiding the following year. He was caught in 2008, after years masquerading under a huge beard and posing as a New Age healer. Karadzic faced 11 charges. In March 2016, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia found him guilty of 10 of those charges, including genocide. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison. He was 70 years old when the ruling was made, and he is currently appealing the decision. What happened to Slobodan Milosevic? Image Slobodan Milosevic was indicted for war crimes. The former Serbian leader and president of Yugoslavia faced trial in 2002, charged with 66 counts of genocide and war crimes in Bosnia, Croatia and Kosovo. A former NATO commander said in 2003 that Milosevic had known that Bosnian Serbs planned to massacre Muslims in Bosnia in 1995, but a verdict could not be given in his trial, as Milosevic was found dead in his prison cell in 2006. What did the West and President Clinton do? Bill Clinton, who took office in 1993 at the height of the conflict, devoted much of his first-term foreign policy effort to the Balkans. He wanted to bomb Serbian supply lines after Sarajevo came under siege, but this was unpopular with his European allies. Eventually, after the market bombing of 1995, he started a NATO-backed bombing campaign that helped bring about peace talks. The talks ended with the Dayton Agreement. In 1999, he said he and his administration had not realized the Serbian forces would withstand the bombing campaign for as long as they did. What will happen in the ruling? Image A woman looks at the graves of the thousands massacred in Bosnia. The trial lasted 523 days and heard harrowing evidence of wartime atrocities. One man who survived the brutality told judges there were a lot of dead boss. Brains were splattered all over. Wednesday's decision is the penultimate in the trials of several army and political leaders over their roles in the conflict. The tribunal will close at the end of the year. Serge Bramitz, the chief prosecutor, said the Mladic judgment, together with the Karadzic judgment, is one of the most important in the history of the tribunal. Judges will hand down the verdict, and then possibly the sentencing. They have previously refused to postpone the verdict on health grounds.